Hey everyone, welcome to Reality TV News Update, the place where we bring you the latest updates, fun moments, and behind-the-scenes stories you won't want to miss. Morgan Pope had never imagined that one moment on Big Brother 27 could define an entire chapter of her life. Yet here she was, months after the finale, still tangled in the emotional fallout of a relationship the public seemed more invested in than she was ready to confront. The words had slipped out casually during a post-show livestream. I don't know if we'll ever have our October conversation. Those few syllables set the fandom ablaze. The weight of the unsaid. The October conversation was a phrase whispered by fans since late in the season. It started as a private joke between Morgan and Vince in Week 5, when Vince told her that once they were both outside the house, away from cameras, microphones, alliances, and paranoia, they'd sit down and talk about everything. The emotions, the misunderstandings, the spark that surprised both of them. "You and I," he'd said, half smiling, half scared. "October, that's when we talk for real." Morgan had nodded. She didn't say yes, she didn't have to. The look in her eyes had been enough. BB27 viewers replayed that moment endlessly on social media, dissecting every micro-expression as if they were decoding ancient scripture. But the world outside the Big Brother house was louder, messier, unfiltered, and far more complicated than anything that happened inside. And October had come and gone. Now, in November, Morgan found herself sitting across from host Danny Reeve on Reality Roundtable, addressing the question fans had been begging to know. Would the conversation ever actually happen? The interview that broke the internet. Danny leaned in, voice soft but surgical. "Morgan, the fandom is obsessed with this October conversation between you and Vince Panaro. Have you two talked?" Morgan inhaled sharply, a deep, bracing breath. She wasn't surprised by the question, but she still wasn't ready. "I'll be honest, I don't know if we'll ever have it." The studio went silent. The live chat exploded. Clips were cut before the interview even finished. But what she didn't say on camera, what she couldn't say, was what she had been carrying privately for weeks, a confusion she wasn't ready to unpack with the entire world watching. Morgan wasn't afraid of difficult conversations. She wasn't afraid of Vince. She was afraid of the truth, whatever it might be. The fallout of fame. After BB27 wrapped up, Morgan went home to a very different world. She had gained hundreds of thousands of followers, her inbox overflowed, brands reached out, and every time she posted anything, even a photo of her breakfast, comments flooded in. "Where's Vince? Have you two talked yet? When's the October conversation?" Some were supportive, many were intrusive. A few crossed lines so aggressively that Morgan began turning her phone off at night just to breathe. Meanwhile, Vince Panaro, charismatic, emotional, unpredictable Vince, handled fame in his own way. He embraced the attention. He live-streamed, he answered fan questions, he ran Q&As where he spoke about the game, the friendships, and yes, occasionally, about Morgan. But he never mentioned October. Not once. Their silence became its own storyline. When two people see the same moment differently, Morgan and Vince's dynamic inside the Big Brother house was undeniable. Their banter was easy, their arguments were passionate, their loyalty to each other, even at their lowest points, was unmistakable. But they also saw the world differently. Morgan was measured. She thought before she spoke. She protected herself emotionally, even when she cared deeply. Vince was expressive. He led with his heart, even when it hurt him. He expected clarity and honesty sometimes before either person was ready to deliver it. Their connection was real, but so were their differences. The October conversation was supposed to be a way to reconcile that, to take a breath and look at each other without gameplay tainting every interaction. But the real world didn't give them that kind of clean slate. The almost conversation. It wasn't that Morgan and Vince hadn't spoken since the finale. They had, briefly, awkwardly, with careful, polite messages that danced around the larger truth neither wanted to confront. 2 weeks after the show ended, they agreed to meet for coffee in Los Angeles. It was supposed to be the moment, the real conversation they'd promised each other. Morgan walked into the cafe wearing a gray sweater and clutching her phone like a lifeline. Vince stood when he saw her, and for a split second, it was just like the Big Brother house again. Warm, familiar, safe. They hugged, and then they sat. But the conversation never happened. Not the real one, not the October one. Instead, they talked about sponsors, publicists, meet and greets, travel schedules, fans, and the endless noise of post-show chaos. They touched briefly on the emotional side of things, but both held back, each assuming the other needed time. When they parted ways, Vince said, "We'll talk again soon." But soon never came. Miscommunication in the modern age. If there was a villain in their story, it wasn't either of them, it was timing. Morgan was overwhelmed, battling sudden fame and battling herself. Vince was juggling opportunities and feeling pressure to give the fans something, even when he wasn't sure what he wanted to give. Every time one reached out, the other was busy. Every time one considered sending a long, vulnerable message, they deleted it. They weren't avoiding each other, they were avoiding the possibility of hurting each other. They were living in parallel emotional universes. When Morgan finally spoke her truth, back in the studio, Danny pressed gently. "Why not? What's holding things back?" Morgan looked down at her hands. She twisted a thin bracelet around her wrist, a nervous habit she had since childhood. "It's not that I don't want to talk to him. It's that I don't know what talking to him will mean. For him. For me, for both of us." She glanced at the cameras, at the glowing red recording lights. She chose her next words with care. When you care about someone, the last thing you want to do is say the wrong thing. And I think both of us are scared of doing that. Danny's expression softened. "Do you miss him?" Morgan took a long moment before nodding. "Yeah, I do." The fans take sides. Within hours, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram erupted. The BB27 fandom split into two camps. Team Vince. She's stringing him along. She doesn't care. He deserves answers. Team Morgan. She's overwhelmed. Fans need to stop pressuring her. She's allowed to move on at her own pace. Some edits showed Vince staring wistfully at Morgan during the season. Others showed Morgan crying in the diary room after their Week 8 argument. Both were used as evidence. Neither was fair. Nobody, not even the most dedicated fan, knew the private version of their story. Vince reacted. A day later, Vince finally addressed the interview during a live stream. His voice was calmer than fans expected. "I heard what Morgan said, and yeah, she's right." He looked down, running a hand through his hair. "I think we both care so much that we're afraid to screw it up." The October conversation. "Yeah, I wanted it, but I wasn't ready either." Chat scrolled like a waterfall. Vince continued, "If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, that doesn't change the fact that she's someone important to me." Then softer, almost to himself, "Some things take time." The unexpected message. 2 nights after the interview, Morgan sat on her balcony with a blanket around her shoulders, scrolling through fan reactions. Some were kind, some were cutting, some were painfully invasive. She closed the apps and set her phone aside. Moments later, it buzzed. It was a message from Vince. It wasn't long, it wasn't emotional, it wasn't heavy, but it was exactly what she needed. "Saw the interview, no pressure. We'll talk when it feels right for both of us. Hope you're doing okay." Morgan exhaled, a soft, relieved sound. For the first time since the finale, she felt like she could breathe. Will the conversation ever actually happen? The truth was simple and complicated at the same time. Maybe. Maybe not. Maybe someday. Maybe never. The October conversation had become bigger than either of them intended. It wasn't just a conversation anymore. It was a symbol, a promise, a question mark, hanging over both their lives. Morgan wasn't psychic. She couldn't predict where things with Vince would go. But she knew one thing with absolute clarity. Whatever happened next had to happen for the right reasons. Not because fans demanded a narrative. Not because October came and went. Not because the internet wanted closure. But because two people who cared about each other finally felt ready to talk. Not as house guests, not as showman speculation fodder, but as themselves. And so their story continues. Morgan didn't give the world a neat, perfect ending. She didn't promise. She didn't deny. She didn't romanticize. She simply told the truth. She wasn't sure. She wasn't ready. And that was okay. Sometimes the most honest answer is, "I don't know yet." The October conversation had become a chapter unwritten, one that still might be written someday. And for now, that was enough.